Welcome to the Hearts Entwined podcast. In this podcast, we'll be having discussions around the secrets which attract lasting, healthy, fulfilling relationships, creating a healthy mindset, and what women should know and understand about men. Introducing your host, Lyn Smith, the Queen of Hearts, relationship expert, trainer, speaker, and best-selling author of the Cupid's Bow technique. Lyn's mission is to have a positive impact in reducing divorce, domestic violence, and suicide.
Welcome, listeners, to this Mastering the Game of Life podcast episode. So this is the beginning of a new era, if you will, a new start. There's a new focus, and the messages that are going to come across from this point are going to be very, very much more action driven. That'll be reflected by the guests as well and their messages. And we start that process today by introducing a lady from Spain, a lady by the name of Lyn Smith. Lyn is also known as the Queen of Hearts, and she is a love, dating and relationship expert. Lyn, a very, very warm welcome to you.
Good morning to you, Paul, and thank you very much for having me.
So what we spoke about a little bit off air was the title, It's Time to Commit to Mastering the Game of Life. So just probably a good starting point is for you to share with us what you perceive around that title, Mastering the Game of Life. What does that mean to you?
Well, I think the reason why it's important to me and why it's important to everybody else is the reason I feel why people thrive or survive or just remain stuck in their lives is because they're either learning and growing or they're actually refusing to learn and grow, and therefore are feeling bored and resigned to just living life in a mundane way and not growing and thriving. And that all comes down to awareness. If we're not aware of what we can do to live a better, healthier, more fulfilled life, then we do get stuck in just remaining in this stuck state of not really experiencing and living our life to our full potential.
Yeah, I agree with that. So what does, in terms of your own personal life then, what does mastering the game of life, what does it mean to you personally?
I feel it's all around, first of all, the word awareness again. It's around how can we live to our full potential, because as humans, I feel we're designed to always learn and grow, and that's how we do survive, and not only survive but thrive and live our highest potential. Because if we're not living up to that highest potential and always learning and growing, then what we're doing is we're staying stuck or even dying. So for me, it's about educating people that if they do feel in their lives currently that there's a lot of challenge and a lot of frustration, there's a lot of issues and there are a lot of problems and they don't feel like they're progressing, then, do your due diligence, research how you can look at those challenges and those problems in a different way to learn, grow and progress and feel as though you're becoming more alive and more aware and progressing in life, so that you are living more fulfilled within your life.
I love the word you use there, awareness. What very appropriate, really, to take us back to the very first podcast that was done, which was ironically under the title Mastering the Game of Life. And it's been on a voyage of discovery since then, and obviously that changed to Mastering Life and that changed to Speaking from Our Hearts. And it's interesting, isn't it, how it's come full circle back to how it started out. And, that awareness of, what being wiser for the experiential learning, because it brings in a point, doesn't it, that, awareness is great. It's a fantastic side of the coin, but it's only one side of the coin. We need to take action, don't we? We need to experience things. We need to test things in order to grow. And yes, we may end up back where we started, but boy, are we wiser for the experience, much more wiser for the experience.
Yeah, certainly. I feel that, some people avoid taking action because they fear failure. they feel that they might make a mistake. But you know what? What's the worst thing that can happen? You know, you might make a mistake. You might fail at doing something. But like you just said, you are and you will be wiser for that experience and be able to tweak something, even just a minor, in a minor way, will give you a different result. And there's no need to fear what that result might be.
Yeah. Actually, as I was listening to you speak there, I'm thinking around just sort of going back to that first podcast. Mastering the game of life is as simple as ABC. And the A was the awareness that we've just spoke around. The B that is the beliefs, and the C is the creativity. Let's dive in a little bit around beliefs, if we may. In your opinion, how influential are beliefs in our lives? You know, in terms of general, and certainly being able to master the game of life.
They're huge. I don't really think the majority of people are aware of the self-talk and what beliefs they are carrying around with them that actually aren't serving them. So, you know, if I had a belief around money, that money is evil, or money, you know, is just for the affluent, then obviously that my different experience will be, you know, very much around that being a truth for what I'm living. And somebody who has a different belief around money, who does believe that, you know, they are abundant and money makes the world go round, will be living a very different life to, you know, the person that doesn't have that belief, don't they?
Absolutely. You know, we attract what we, you know, what we are, what we think. I think, I don't know what the origin of that quote is, but you know, there's many variations of that. And, you know, it's absolutely true, isn't it? What you focus on, you attract and you get. You know, I think a very simple example, if you stand there at a dartboard and focus on trying to get a bullseye and you throw enough darts, sooner or later, you're going to get a bullseye. Whereas if you stand there with your head looking at the floor and, well, I'll never get a bullseye, never, you probably end up throwing most of the darts in the floor because you're not focused on the target. And that's just a very simple example, isn't it?
Yeah, a very good example. You know, as Henry Ford said, who was the car manufacturer, you know, whether you think you can or you can't, you're right. So if you think you can do something, you're more likely to, you know, achieve that result on embracing that belief. Or whether you believe that you can't do something, again, you're more likely to see the result that supports that as well.
I think he ought to have added in, I'm not quite sure either. Maybe. Cover all three bases, but anyway, we move on. So what about the creativity then? So we've got the A for awareness, the B for beliefs. Sorry, is there anything else you want to add on beliefs before I move on to creativity?
No, I'm happy to move on.
Yeah. So what's your thoughts around creativity in our lives then? What does that mean to you? Is it important, or is it just, I don't know, are we conning ourselves? Because I've heard that said by people, well, you know, thinking differently, Paul, telling yourself different things, you're just conning yourself. Well, what's your reaction to that?
Well, the thing is that our imaginations are very powerful, you know, and it's a useful tool to, you know, support our growth. So if you can't actually believe for now, you know, that you can live a great productive life because of your previous conditioning, then that's okay. You know, it's not wrong to actually feel that you're not being true to yourself if that's your current belief. But by reinforcing and challenging that thinking to something a bit more self-serving and more positive around, you know what, I'm going to start to look for different ways of thinking and different ways that I can support serving me to live a more powerful, better, purposeful life, then, you know, that's something that you can embrace on a daily basis, which will then eventually, if you keep reconditioning yourself along those lines, will become more concrete until it's an absolute, you know, certainty and more positive belief that then does start to attract the results that you would want to see in your life, that demonstrates that it is improving and that you are growing.
I love that word you use there, that purpose word. Absolutely love that word. We'll come back to that, I'm sure, in a little while. I mean, as well as the awareness, as well as the beliefs, I mean, beliefs, as you absolutely rightly say, are beyond huge. They all are, aren't they? I mean, they're all kind of part of the same powerful package. Put the three together, and I'm not saying they're only three, but they're three very powerful influences. And, you're certainly well on the way to, gaining some key insights around mastering the game of life. Because I think, knowledge is one thing, but then we're back to that simplicity, or not as the case may be, of taking action, aren't we? Because without that, they're just fancy words on paper, aren't they?
Yeah, and I do agree, that sometimes it can be quite a challenge for people to think that they can't change their lives if they're currently experiencing, a lot of frustration and a lot of unhappiness. But you know what? You have got the power. You can look at things differently. You can choose to connect with your heart more and really feel and be more intuitive around what is you as a person and your heart actually advising you to do. Sometimes we just need to stop and listen and connect to our hearts. And then on the back of that, like you say, the other side of the coin of doing is then, well, how can I implement something, maybe a different way of thinking that supports me in making that change that's going to help me progress and live that more fulfilling, alive life.
Definitely. We've mentioned the power of beliefs there. You've mentioned that massive, massive P word, purpose. As I say, we'll come to that in a little while. I just want to dive in, if I may, around what we both know are also immensely powerful, the 6 human needs, because they are critical factors, aren't they, in life in general, but certainly, working towards mastering the game of life.
Yeah, as you and me, totally know, the human needs are our drivers, and will actually even compromise our values to get our needs met. So very, very powerful insights and tools to certainly share with people.
Let's have a little sort of whistle stop into those 6 and in the context of how they can help us master the game of life. So let's start with the old favourite, certainty. How important is it, or more importantly, what is certainty? Why is it important in our lives? How can we put this into our lives to create a significant stepping stone towards mastering the game of life? What's your views around certainty and how it may serve us?
Well, certainty is what's familiar to us. Certainty is about what we're comfortable with right now. And certainty, to a large degree is a nice, safe area for us to sit in and feel comfortable around. But I suppose within that, after a period of time, if life gets very, very repetitive and certain, then obviously the opposite side of the coin to that is that you become very bored.
And certainly from your own work and your own sort of professional focus around love, dating and relationships, do you come across it much where, people in relationships say, oh, do you know what, the relationship is very certain, but it's boring, like you say, it's boring. There's nothing happening. Is that a cause of breakup in relationships?
Yeah, I feel it definitely is. That there are relationships that get to a point where they become so predictable and so certain that, you just, like I just said, get very bored with it, and then really most people don't necessarily have the tools or the awareness to know how to change that, to invoke more spice, to invoke more uncertainty, if you like, more spontaneity, more variety, to progress that relationship in a different direction to ensure its longevity.
Or could it be as well that, they have got the tools, they have got the insights, they have got the awareness, but, the relationship's run its course? I mean, that's kind of okay as well, isn't it?
Massively, yeah. I think, each relationship is there and presented to you at any one point in time for you to learn whatever lessons you need to learn, and vice versa. And then, like you say, that there probably comes a period where, you know what, this relationship has now run its course. You need to move on and attract the next person that's going to give you the next lot of life lessons.
Round 2 or 4 or 5 or whatever. Okay, so obviously from the certainty, we've then also got the uncertainty and the variety, haven't we? Tell us about that. Maybe good to stick with the relationship theme, bearing in mind that relationships in life are massive, yet again, in mastering the game of life. So, we could speak generally, and I think to a certain degree we are speaking quite general. Might be useful to start focusing it in a little bit more now around, that key aspect of all our lives, relationships. So what's your thoughts around sort of variety stroke uncertainty in our world in the context of relationships?
I feel we've quite wrongly been educated and parented to be more the same as men and women, which I've discovered isn't serving our society in terms of romantic relationships. Men and women are different. Men aren't hairy women. They think differently. They behave differently. They are obviously physically different. So it's a case of, getting back to basics and thinking back to what our wisdom teachers knew. And that is, that men and women are different for a reason. Otherwise, we wouldn't need the different sexes. We'd just be able to procreate ourselves. So it's about, embracing those differences, and that variety is what creates passion in relationships. It's what creates that aliveness. It's what creates that attraction.
Yeah, absolutely. So moving on to the third human need then, the need for significance. How does that fit in a relationship context?
Yeah, interesting one. I feel that quite often, dramas that happen in relationships are driven by a need for significance from one partner or the other, and it is probably worth touching on at this point, that our human needs can get met in a negative or positive way. So if you're somebody that, very much creates drama in your relationship, or you're with somebody that creates drama in a relationship, that usually is probably on the back of them meeting their high need for significance.
Interesting, yeah. And the flip side of the significance is the love and connection. Now, I know from the conversations I've had with countless people, this uncertainty, this ambiguity around the word love. I think connection's a fairly sort of straightforward understanding, but love, that just opens up so many different aspects and ideas and dynamics, doesn't it? What is love?
Well, I certainly think the basis for most relationships is the connection, and that's where you have got that friendship and things in common. But what sort of helps it evolve more into love is embracing that diversity, as I mentioned earlier on, and being comfortable with somebody being different to who you are, and being absolutely, I suppose, allowing that difference not to impinge upon your own mindset and your own response to them being different, but meet it in a loving way, so that that you are always in a position whereby you're not only giving love, but you're not having any expectations around what you expect from them, and on the back of that you'll receive their love in return.
Yeah. So those first 4 needs, they're like the basic needs, aren't they? The core needs. And then the next two are what the highest spiritual needs. And we need those first four in place before we go on to the spiritual needs. But the fifth one, the first of the spiritual needs, is the need for growth, isn't it? And, in the context of mastering the game of life generally, I think it's fair to say that it goes nicely with growth because we're learning new things. And so what's your thoughts around the growth then? How does this fit either in a general concept of mastering the game of life or more specifically in a relationship context?
I think it brings us back nicely to that word awareness again. It's all around, as we've probably mentioned before, we don't know what we don't know until we do. And, it is around if life isn't great for you right now, researching or getting a coach or mentor to help you see things in a different way, or experimenting yourself with, thinking in a different way or behaving in a different way to get a different result, and not being scared of fear or let fear stop you from trying something new. Don't let any fear of failure or rejection let it stop you from trying something new. Just know that whatever result you get is just feedback, and learn from that and grow from that.
And then the ultimate human need, the highest need, is the need for contribution, isn't it? And I often feel that's like a big umbrella where all the other five sit underneath. And, when we look at these 6 human needs, I mean, yes, collectively, they're a big, big, big stepping stone. As you quite rightly say, so is beliefs. So just tell us around your thoughts then around, the contribution element, either in a general mastering the game of life context and or the context specifically of relationship. What's your thoughts? What's your feelings around this contribution element?
I think first and foremost, that contribution has to be to yourself. What relationship have you currently got with yourself? Because I think for most of us, and this is just my own personal opinion, that the relationship you have with yourself quite often reflects, your external relationships as well. So if you can look at yourself and know that you can love and appreciate yourself and believe in yourself and value yourself, then that's probably how others will treat you externally. So it's very important, I think, to start off with in terms of contribution. What are you contributing first and foremost to yourself?
Yeah, definitely. Because you can't give what you don't have, can you? I mean, that's the simple. And I've opened that up as a debate to many guests previously, and there's been varying answers. Oh, yeah, you can. You can always give something different, and that's not for me to judge whether that's right or wrong. I think, certainly from a podcast host perspective, all you do is set the question and, invite thoughts to come forward accordingly without judgment that they're right, wrong or indifferent. But certainly an interesting one, isn't it?
Yeah, massively. And again, that can be quite challenging for people. They have been conditioned by life events and the way they've been parented and the way they've been taught by teachers as they've been growing up. And that obviously has affected, what they currently believe and what they are currently understanding about who they are and what they are. But that doesn't mean you have to, keep those things in your head if they're not serving you in your life right now.
Yeah. You mentioned 2 or 3 times previously, and I reinforced it about the fact that we'd be coming to purpose. And we will, just bear with us on this. We are getting to this massive thing called purpose. But before we do, I want to touch on a word, another P word, a simple 4-letter word. And I want to touch on this and ask you what your thoughts are in terms of how, and I will use the word critical it is, in helping us to take those first steps to committing mastering the game of life. And that word is pain. A lot of people shy away from that word pain, don't they? What's your thoughts in terms of, the role it plays in our stepping stones along that path?
Yeah, it's an important one. Pain actually can be a very good leverage, can't it, for change? Because the majority of people are more motivated to move away from pain in order to make a change than they are around being motivated towards, something that's going to give them pleasure. That's just human nature. So in the short term, pain can be a very useful leverage for, making us make that first small step, whatever that might be.
Yeah. And that's the key thing, though, isn't it? To have something to focus on going forward. Earlier on when I used the example of focusing on the dartboard, trying to aim towards the bullseye, because without that focus, there's an old saying, isn't it? If you don't stand for something, you'll fall for everything. And I think that's very relevant here. So it's about having that pain as a starting point, that leverage, as you quite rightly call it. And then, okay, so what is my target? What am I looking at here? And that for me is that P word, purpose. Where are we going? What we're looking at? Why am I here? What's your thoughts around purpose and how critical it is in terms of mastering the game of life?
I feel it's huge, without the P word, purpose. I do feel that people are lost and quite often stuck in a very unfulfilling way of being. Purpose usually is something that gives people a reason to get out of bed in the morning and helps them live that more happier, prosperous life that we're all entitled to live. And this isn't a pipe dream. We can all have that more purposeful, meaningful, fulfilling life. It's just that, unfortunately, for most people, they haven't been given the tools or have researched or even know that there is, new levels of awareness out there to help them create that for themselves.
Definitely. I want to sort of work towards an end now to bring things. We could talk for hours about this, couldn't we? Just a title like Mastering the Game of Life is so immense that we could be here for days, weeks. We could be here forevermore talking about this. And, I'd certainly like to invite you back on and, we can dive into other aspects. But I wanted to start it with a sort of focus of, talking about relationships. And as you brilliantly pointed out, that relationship with ourselves is so critical as well, first and foremost. So I want to sort of, before I ask you a big question, just invite you to share your contact details for listeners, how people can reach out to you, get in touch with you. What are those details?
I think probably one of the best ways to contact me is through my website, which is hearts-entwined.com.
Well, they'll be in the show notes. That's fairly easy to remember. Okay, so finally then, the big question. Drum roll. The big question. So in terms of, the title that we chose, it's time to commit to mastering the game of life. What if there was just one thing that you could single out? And maybe there isn't, because we've touched on beliefs, awareness, creativity, 6 human needs, the power of purpose, the part that pain plays in. But is there one message more than anything that for you, based on your research, your knowledge, your experience, that you would leave, as the critical or a critical factor that goes towards mastering the game of life? What would that message be?
One word, really: love. And to just expand on the context of love is that, it's my belief that we are, in our purest form, love, energy, and we've lost that connection with it. We can either choose to live by connecting to our hearts and listening more intuitively to ourselves, to what are the love messages that we are receiving, to live that better, higher, more purposeful self, or, are we going to still stay stuck and choose the opposite option of fear and, let that mind chatter in our minds stop us achieving, who we're meant to be.
That's beautiful. That was very simply but massively powerfully put. Thank you for that. So, and on that thank you and gratitude note, Lyn, I really do offer my sincere gratitude for your shares, your wisdom, your insight. I know personally I have that benefit of being able to, say that, I've been on that journey with you. I understand the power of what you're saying. So, immense gratitude for sharing that. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So you mentioned there about, embracing our hearts. That's very, very, very relevant, because all that leaves me to do now, listeners, is to say, remember, mastering the game of life starts by embracing our hearts.
Thanks for listening to the Hearts Entwined podcast. You can follow Lyn via the Facebook group Two Hearts Entwined, or search Lyn Smith, inspirational speaker, at LinkedIn, or email lyn@hearts-entwined.com. That's LYN@hearts-entwined.com. Remember, true love starts with opening our hearts.